You're on mute, Sweta.
Okay, I think we are ready to kick off this amazing webinar together. So let me start by first saying hello and welcome to everybody who's here. Welcome to our Lexicon of Life webinar. I'm Shweta, and with Kelly here, I'm really excited to start this journey with all of you to explore how language influences our perceptions of the world and our connection with nature. We are really thrilled to be able to join you guys because I think today is the beginning of what I definitely promise you will be an enlightening conversation about the power of language and the profound impact it has on the relationships we have in the natural world.
Morning, everyone. Yes, Sweta, I'm so excited to dive into this. We've been talking about it a lot between the kinship and Gibbon teams, just in terms of how we work. And as we shift our language, it shifts our work, it shifts our worldview, it shifts the ways we are with one another. So I'm so excited to dive deeper today to see how words really can shape our perceptions and actions and ultimately our future with the planet and with one another. So we're excited to really explore some of these themes with you all from around the world, hear from your languages, your cultures, your relationship with nature, and share some really beautiful, incredible, esteemed speakers with you all today.
Yeah.
I Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, I'm Kelly McClelland, and I work as the creative director of Kinship. And Kinship is an organization that's partnering with Gibbon on this webinar today. And Kinship is an organization that really invites us to explore our deep connection with all of life. And it's particularly looking at the role of narrative change and cultural transformation. And it's all about challenging this broken story we have that humans are separate and superior to nature, and how the root of that broken story really causes a lot of the chaos that we're seeing in our relationship with the natural world today. So, through sharing stories and diverse artistic expressions, we can help co create a new narrative that really embodies a reciprocal, interdependent relationship with nature. And Kinship is all about this movement that really shifts the culture towards living in reciprocity with a thriving and vibrant planet.
Yeah, so today for this webinar, our goal is really to uncover this transformative potential of language. We will examine how the dominant and often anthropocentric, language shapes our worldviews and our behaviors towards nature today. And we could think about how it contrasts against the more holistic and interconnected perspectives offered by traditional and indigenous lexicons. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. We're going to have a lot of artistic expressions also happening at the end of this webinar. So definitely stay tuned. We're going to have interactive spaces. We're going to have breakouts. So it's packed with all the things that you can expect from one webinar.
Yeah, and we hope that by introducing you all to this Lexicon of Life project that we're working on, it really helps us all embrace the vibrancy and richness of languages that celebrate our kinship with the earth. And as we dive deeper into learning about these practices and languages from our various Indigenous speakers from around the world, all of our speakers from around the world, it's really critical that we clarify our intention here, that all of us, and in collaboration with Gibbon and Kinship, we're really here to honor and learn from the ways in which Indigenous peoples and traditional people relate to land and water through language, through their cosmology, through their worldviews. And these practices are intrinsic to their cultures and identities. However, by embracing these practices or practicing language that doesn't equate to becoming indigenous or claiming indigenous identities. We really want to make that distinction here. And that being indigenous and having that identity is really rooted in a complex tapestry of history, culture, and connection to the land that goes way beyond adoption of practices or particular words or elements of language. And as we were talking about, this particular webinar does have to do with language. And we want to honor that many Indigenous peoples have lost their languages, either forcibly or through assimilation or through Indigenous erasure, and that many Indigenous languages are also sacred languages. So our speakers will share a little bit about this today, but please ensure that you're engaging and asking permission and respect and honoring Indigenous peoples and their languages.
So as we start now, we would like to give you, with the brief introduction we have given you about language, about the Lexicon of Life. We want to just say that for us, the Lexicon of Life is not just about words. It's about reviving and celebrating the profound connection with nature. And we've seen over and over again through the work in Gibbon and in kinship that there is a power to words. And sometimes we forget how much of an impact it can have on how we are, but how we behave as well. And we hope today we could really start with that, because we see that changing language can be a powerful tool in actually creating a change, a cultural shift, and even transformative change. So yeah, let's hope we can have fun today to rethink and reshape with our dialogue this relationship with nature. Yeah, over to you, Kelly.
Yeah, we're really excited to embark on this journey together. Thank you all so much for being here. It's 8 a.m. here. I'm sure it's 8 p.m. where you are, or 3 a.m. or noon. So thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to make this possible. And we want to start with a blessing and a land acknowledgement from one of our speakers, Cynthia Ruiz. Cynthia Ruiz is a best-selling author, professor, and leadership expert. She is Latina and a Native American leader. Welcome, Cynthia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We open this gathering with our hearts filled with gratitude and respect for the first people of the land, the ancestors who were the original stewards of the land, the indigenous people across the globe who we know are still with us today. I'm in California, and I want to honor and acknowledge the first people of Los Angeles, the Gabrielino Tongva, who continue to teach us how to respect the land today. Wherever you are in the world, we honor your ancestors and the first people of your land. I ask the Creator, as we come together today, to fill our minds and our consciousness with the consciousness of unity, love, and compassion. I ask the Creator that each and every one of us be blessed. I ask for blessings for everyone's family. I ask for blessings for everyone's community. And I ask for everyone to be blessed around the world, because we know we are one. Amen and aho. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. That was really beautiful. And thank you for giving us a chance to be a part of this beautiful blessing today, and to start this webinar with you. So as we start, we always want to first hear from our amazing audience today. We are close to 70 people today on this webinar, and I want to hear a little bit from you. So I'm going to put a link in the chat for a Mentimeter, and I would like to hear from you answers to this question. How often have you actually, how often do you actually use nature-centric language in your daily conversation? How often do you think about the words that you have in your language, and if the words in your language have a connection with nature? And I'm going to put this link in the chat, and you guys can answer there, but I'll also put the question in the text, in the chat as well, so that you can start thinking about it while I put the link. Okay. Thank you, Andrea. So if you guys can look at the link and tell us a little bit about where you're coming from in your mind. If you think about what's my current state of connection of my language with nature, tell us what that looks like. So I'm going to open my Mentimeter so that I can see you guys populating it and I can see what answers are coming up for all of you.
I love this part, Sweta. It's like waiting for a yummy cookie to bake or like a delicious dish. It's like we're in the process of like stirring and putting all these different ingredients in, and I'm never quite sure what kind of um, food, postre, dessert that we're gonna get. So I love this part.
I like the way you have described it, and it does feel like that, like when the graph's moving. It looks like we have a pretty good number of people. Thank you for all the amazing people who have put us in. It looks like we have two spaces that are competing with each other, which is I tried to do it intentionally often, and my language is the language of life. I'm really happy to see that, which is very cool. And even if it wasn't, this could be the day we start. So any of the answers are all welcome. Okay. I'm going to give this another 2-3 minutes for people to, sorry, 30 seconds more for people to answer. And then I will shift to the next question, which is the fun word cloud. And we can think of words. And now that you're already thinking about how often you use nature-centric language, start preparing yourself for the next answer, which is actually the words and phrases that have come to your mind when you answer this question.
Yeah, I love, there's someone in the chat that's kind of prompting that shift of, they asked this questions from Singapore. Thank you. What are your examples of nature-friendly language? When I think about this in English, particularly in the workplace, we use a lot of words like, oh, I'm going to make that project happen, or we make a baby, and I've heard in other languages, actually, the shift is like, how does a baby grow? Or like shifting from mechanical, industrial, technological language to language that's rooted in nature-based systems and ways like grow, seed, cultivate, propagate, that actually weaves you into relationship with the being rather than objectifying it.
You've perfectly transitioned us to the next question, which is the phrases and the words that you have in your native languages or in the language you use right now to speak that actually reflect this connection with nature. If you can think of one word that comes to your mind when you think about this, put it in here. I think this is going to be the most exciting word cloud ever. So I'm excited to see what people answer. And if you're not able to use the word cloud, I can also put the same question in the chat. Yeah, it's if you see the question and you aren't able to put it in, just put it in the chat as well. Nice. There's so much to dwell into each of the beautiful words that are coming up here. It's like this is the beginning of something amazing.
Mm. I had a Spanish professor once in Guatemala, actually Mayan indigenous elder, and he was saying how language is like a key to entering a whole different realm of a culture. And by knowing different languages, you have like a secret key that unlocks a different way of seeing and being in the world. And I know you're multilingual too, Sweta, and I'm sure many of the folks on here are. So it's so beautiful to see this cloud as this tapestry of multilingual secret keys unlocking different worldviews and realms.
Yep. That's really beautiful, Kelly. There was a word that my professor told me about when you were talking about this, which was they had a specific word in Bengali, which is one of the Indian languages, which is to talk about the sound that water makes as it goes through the pebbles in the stream. And just when it jumps through the pebbles, there is a specific word for that and that sound. And I thought, wow, that's so cool.
What's the word? Do you know
I
it? You
don't
could
remember
read
it.
it.
I have to email him to ask him. But I remember he told me that there was a word for that, and that like blew my mind, just thinking that such a word existed. Yeah. Okay, thank you everybody for the beautiful words. I'm going to leave this on, but I'll stop sharing my screen so that we could start having our amazing speakers to talk to us now. But thank you for everybody for creating this beautiful word cloud for us. I'm sure we're going to be using this in many places over the next year as this project of the Lexicon of Life grows. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sweta, and everyone. I can't wait to see what we keep co-creating together in that word cloud. I have a feeling that as the webinar keeps going, those words will keep growing. So I want to introduce our first speaker. It's an honor for me to introduce her because she's a close friend and colleague and one of my biggest inspirations, Maggie Fox. She is the co-founder of Kinship, and she has a long career in law, public policy, and organizing, and has worked in the climate and biodiversity space for over 35 years. Welcome, Maggie. Thank you for joining us.
Good day, everyone. It's a delight to see you. I'm lucky. I'm looking out the window, and even though it's August here in the western part of the United States, where things are turning brown and where water is scarce, it is actually a very green day because there's been a lot of rain. And right out in front of me, there are 4 baby rabbits cavorting out there, keeping my attention off the screen and onto them. So I'll try. They're very playful this morning and nibbling on each other and eating at the same time. So my job today is to talk about the role and purpose of language and the role of a need to shift our language in order to live differently going into the 21st century. I would say most of us are here today because we ache for the kind of world invoked by restoring our worldview of kinship with all life. First, let's talk about language itself. Language is often forgotten. The role of language and the power of language is often something we are aware of, but have not given the time and attention to really understand its deep significance to us as human beings and as part of the web of life. The desire to communicate, the desire to express our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our dreams resides in the desire to have a language and to create one from the earliest times. Interestingly enough, language shapes our worldview. And you've already heard that term, that word, worldview. It's 2 words put together into one several times this morning from Kelly and from Sweta. But we should take a moment and pause because that term has arisen over the last many years, and become very dominant because our worldview is in sharp contrast with living in harmony with this world that we are a part of. And let's talk about that just for a minute. Worldview is the notion that we have explicit, meaning very visible and you understand the source of it, and implicit, meaning it arises in ways that are often unknown to us and a bit mysterious, perceptions and notions of how I am in the world, how we are in the world, and how all of life operates in the world. And we acquire that worldview largely through language, the language that we are brought up into the world with, because language reflects our values, our belief systems, our priorities, so that words, phrases, idioms, commonly used terms, which everyone seems to understand. And if we don't, we quickly try to figure out what that term is so that we're not left out of the conversation. All happens all the time, everywhere. Think about looking at a baby, new parents or those who love a new child into the world, listening to the gurgles and watching their feet move and utterly entranced with what is already a desire by a small infant to communicate by making sounds. Language reveals how we perceive the world and how we choose to interact with it, both our thoughts and our actions. Language frames cultural norms and etiquette, teaches us how to meet someone, how to address someone, how to touch or not touch, appropriate forms of respect or the absence of respect. Language, another term exists called language relativity, which is an interesting term. It's the concepts of space, time, consciousness, and the absence or the presence of spaciousness in our lives as well as in our language. For example, just a small example, in English, language moves horizontally from left to right, but in China, it's vertical from top to bottom. And when you think about a language that goes this way as opposed to this way, horizontally versus vertically, you can imagine that that has a huge impact on the worldview of those who speak. Language reflects our perceptions of history, of culture, and creates in us a sense of specific, very specific and unique perspectives and values. At one point, there was one worldview, and it came from ancestral knowledge, which is in effect life-affirming, relational, and animistic. And then there is also another worldview that has emerged and is obvious, and that is one of human dominance and control. The differences in those two worldviews have led us to where we are today. But when you think about language without actually getting into its value or its impact, in many ways, it's a delivery device for all things cultural and artistic. And that is done through traditions, stories, rituals, ceremonies, historical accounts. For many centuries, we knew of our human history and the history of this planet through storytelling by the fire or in a circle, or oral storytelling as opposed to the storytelling of today, which is not just in art and voice, but in writing and many other forms. The other forms of language are not always just words. It's artistic expressions of music, dance, drawing, sculpture, poetry, painting. Language, in its simplest sense and in its broadest sense, shapes our identity and our sense of belonging, both our personal and collective sense of belonging, or the absence of it. The other key part about language is that it's always changing, just as we are, just as life is. And language is the way we reflect those shifts in our societal values, in technology, in spirituality, in global influences, power dynamics. Just think about the word internet. It has moved across the world and in its English form, and it is rarely translated into the language of that individual country. the whole history of language in humankind, 1% of time of humans on the planet is a different language, the language that we live in today, which is one of separation and superiority over the natural world and over other humans. In the 1600s and 1700s, very dramatic things began to happen, but because the world moved at a different pace than it does today, there was little understanding across the globe of what was happening. When Europeans began to colonize the entire planet, leaving in ships to all parts of the world, and taking a world view with them that humans were superior to and separate from all of life, that we were not only stewards, we were lords, kings, emperors, and our wants and our wishes dominated all life forces. And much of life was moved from being part of a circle and a web to one of human and non-human, and all non-human was seen as beneath or minimally separate from, but beneath all human endeavors. And what has that done? Here we sit at the start of the 21st century, so in sorrow and in fear and in sadness at the loss of many forms of life, of extinction, of fighting, of power struggles every day in the world, because that worldview has led us over time, like inexorable ways that the ocean changes the shape of sand, into a world that is, there's a sort of a zero-sum game about life. We're on top or we don't exist. And that has been a long time it's been that way a long time from the point of view of people who are here today. But when you look at the whole of time that humans have been on the planet, it's less than 1% that we have driven this notion of separation and superiority into a place where we have hit the wall of that choice, of those choices and that perspective. In the end, there are only really two worldviews, even though one can argue there are different worldviews within different languages. But when you look at all of humankind and you think about how this all has distilled itself down at this moment to two worldviews. One is nature-based, where we understand that all people are indigenous to the earth with both rights and responsibilities. Often under the system, the other worldview, anthropocentric worldview of superiority and separation, the exact opposite is true. There is no sense of interdependence, and there is no sense that there's nothing humans can't do, and there are no limits to what we can and allow ourselves to do. But here we are today, hitting those limits every day in every direction that we turn, in the simplest, smallest ways and in the largest possible ways. And the whole notion of kinship, which for me is a labor of love, over time, as we have begun kinship, we have evolved into understanding that some of the most important work begins here today with first an awareness of language and its power, and second, a personal decision that evolves into a collective decision that focusing on our language and understanding not only its power, but its significance is a decision to be sensitized to our language and not to use words that are floating around in our ethos if they are damaging and if they are not life-centering and if they are not regenerative. So the invitation of this gathering today is to take yet, and for some of you who have been very sensitive about this for a long time, and for those of us who are learning that sensitization, this is the time to take another step, another 5 steps in your own journey of becoming aware of how your language falls out of you, as if you have no control, when in fact you do. We all do. And also to honor the idea that we, by simply purposefully deciding to pay attention to our language and the language of the world and come together, not just as me, Maggie, and all of us on this call, but to actually affect all those around us, that by changing our language, we change our worldview. And by changing our worldview, we can live differently. We can live in partnership. We can live in the recognition of our interdependence and the joy and beauty of understanding that language is sacred, that we are sacred, and that our respect for and engagement with life is the beginning of a whole new way of living. So welcome, and I welcome any questions you might have. There are many more things to talk about in this context. This is just a brief little moment of focusing on the power of language, and why we have chosen this time to invite you to join us in shifting that language.
Thank you so much, Maggie, and thank you so much for giving us that overview. It really helps us reflect on how just words, which we think are just words, the way I just said it, can actually have such a profound view on the way we live and our entire world and our culture and so much more. And I think, yeah, this is, as you said, the beginning of something that we should start thinking more consciously about, like small things, but then that can have profound impact on everything around us. So just let's take this conversation further, and let's actually hear from some more indigenous wisdom on how they are seeing it, and understanding from their point of view and their lived experience of how this looks like. So I would like to invite Ramson, who's the founder of Nikia, an organization that is dedicated to preserve indigenous traditional knowledge, which is essential for biodiversity conservation. He is a member of the Maasai community, and he is a strong advocate for safeguarding indigenous knowledge. He's also on the advisory committee for resource mobilization for the Kuming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. I would like to hand over the floor to you, Ramson.
Hi, everyone, and thank you to you, Sweta and everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope you can hear me nicely. Sometimes it's a challenge. With the internet, you can talk with yourself. So as Sweta said, my name is Ramson Karmushu. I come from Kenya. I'm a Maasai, and I speak Maasai as it is my indigenous language, and I work with an organization known as MIKIA. MIKIA is in short form, it's My Indigenous Knowledge in Action. And this is really a very important meeting to be and to discuss around the language and knowledge. I think they are one on one. First of all, MIKIA it means directly like don't take me away. And it is the indigenous people's knowledge in this sense that is talking to indigenous peoples or indigenous elders to leave it behind as they leave the community. So we really value indigenous elders, both women and men, as the libraries for indigenous peoples. And once we lose one, we always say it's like a whole library burnt down. Because if they have not passed down that knowledge, then it could be something that's losing a whole book of knowledge. Language is really very important. And I also appreciate that this has been recognized by the it has been recognized globally that this is the decade for indigenous languages. And I think starting this at the same time is also very, very important to continue stressing the same decade of languages, and also how indigenous languages could be important, how language is important in preserving and conserving biodiversity. In this case, in the indigenous people's perspectives, indigenous languages connect us with nature. I think without our indigenous languages, we would have lost quite a lot. It's first of all the bank of our knowledge. So if we lose our indigenous languages, it's equally saying that we are losing our knowledge. They help us to keep critical words and phrases that connect us with nature. The language also keeps us connected to nature in so many ways, such as phrases, just individual words, and as well as sayings. And basically naming species that we are also connected to. Sayings, for example, that I will use one that I just mentioned that connects us, for example, to the blessings. When we bless in the Maasai language, we use quite a lot of words that connect us directly with nature. And there are some that we relate from the taxonomy, which is the sky, to the land itself and the plants in it, as well as the wild animals. And the first thing is, of course, we go to the stars. When we mention the stars, sometimes you can be blessed and say, shine like the morning star, shine like the sun, like shed the light that like the sun. But at the same time, there are so many very good plants that provide medical care, and others good aroma like scent. And one word that I wanted to use is one that we say toropilo and osinoni. This is a natural mint plant that has a very good scent, and we believe that it's a natural scent that's provided by nature. And anytime you go around that plant, you get that good scent. And it's good in a way that some people even feel like it's medical. And when you are blessed in such a way, it's connecting you to that plant from nature. And if we lose, for example, that language, we equally lose such words. I also say that even though our languages are really very important and they help us in keeping our knowledge, nature also speaks. It speaks very loud, but it's only a few people can understand it. And those people that are few that can understand it, first of all, it is us who can interpret nature. Everything speaks to us, but it's not in words, but it's in the things that we see. So when we interpret nature, it's also a language that maybe someone else cannot understand. And a good thing to say or to mention here is, for example, even us as indigenous peoples, not everyone can interpret nature. We also have some specific people who can interpret nature. And these, the cosmologists who can interpret the sky, the stars, the clouds, the wind, they interpret different things. And we also have such people like the foreseers who can look into different other things. We also have other people like biodiversity monitoring, really critical and important as for us as people who rely on nature. For example, as a pastoralist, I keep livestock and I rely on nature to feed my livestock so that the livestock can be a source of my food. And there are so many things that I can interpret. When I see the stars, I call it Nkokwa, the 7 stars that are in the sky, and they always disappear in June. And Nkokwa, for example, means that when they disappear and go down, there is that kind of rain that comes, and it's also known as Nkokwa. So they relate one on one. The second thing is around That's Ngukwa. The second thing is around a rain that rains in October, and that one is the rain that we name it after a certain insect known as the dragonfly. The dragonfly is known as tumren, and that rain is specifically also known as tumren. And we monitor that kind of insect to know when is the tumren coming and what time. So when they fly high up in the sky, we know the tumren is quite far to rain. When they come down, we know the tumren is close. When they go close, flying around the ground, we also know that the tumren is just hitting the ground at any time. So nature is so powerful. It also it communicates to us, and that I say that's a silent language, but it's a language that can be understood by indigenous peoples. Nature also connects us spiritually as well as culturally. There are so many things that we cannot do when some other things are not happening, and there are so many things that we have to do when some other things are happening concerning nature, biodiversity, and also the cosmology, as well as the things that are happening around us. I will stop there. I know many people have a lot of questions. There is always a short time in these presentations, but I hope to hear a few questions that we can respond to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramson, for that. That was really beautiful to hear. It felt like I got a chance to dwell into your life and through the words really feel a day in your life, which was beautiful for me. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Ramson. Yes, I cannot wait to hear the questions and learn more. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Cynthia Ruiz, who did our opening blessing. As I mentioned, Cynthia Ruiz is a best-selling author, professor, and leadership expert, and she is a Latina and Native American leader. Thank you so much for sharing more wisdom with us, Cynthia. We can't wait to see what's coming next. Handing it over to you.
Osio Dawado, Cynthia. So I just said in Cherokee, hello, my name is Cynthia, and my Cherokee name is Lion Mother. And so I am a Cherokee citizen. Cherokees are the largest tribe in the United States with over 460,000 citizens. My pronouns are she and her. And I just want to say I am so excited. I know this is a virtual meeting, but I could actually feel the energy coming through the screen. So I am just so honored and happy to be here. So you heard from the previous speakers that language matters and words are important. Maggie also talked about how we develop our language, and our language is really developed by our society and really reflects our beliefs. And I'll give you an example of that. In the Cherokee language, when someone dies and makes their transition, we don't have a word for goodbye. We simply don't, because we believe that our spirits will meet again. So it's not goodbye, it's until we see you again. Also, in the Cherokee language, what's very important to us is harmony and balance. We believe that we should live in harmony and balance with the world around us, with all people, with nature. And so we strive for harmony and balance in everything we do. I also know that words are powerful and words have energy. And so we know that when you speak, it's very important to select your words properly, because words have that energetic vibration. Now, I want to talk about how I perceive nature and the words that I use around nature. So first of all, I have a lot of respect for nature. And one of the reasons I respect nature so much is because nature is absolute, and nature runs in cycles. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there is certainty in nature. I know that the sun is going to shine every day and the moon will come up at night. Now sometimes there might be clouds, we might not see the sun, but we know it's there. We also know that there's cycles of the seasons. I know for certainty that spring will follow winter, that summer will follow spring. So there's absolute certainty in that. I know that the moon runs in cycles. We start off with the new moon, which is for us, we believe in that balance of the new moon. And then it goes through a cycle to the full moon. So the point is, we believe that nature doesn't lie, that there's certainty. So my language around nature is with my full respect, almost like if I'm talking about a family member. So when I talk about Earth, the planet, I refer to it as Mother Earth. Why Mother Earth? Because when you really think about it, the earth is what provides us our nourishment. It provides us our food. It provides us our water. It provides us what we need to sustain ourselves. So we look at Earth, our nature is almost like a family. It's Mother Earth. When I refer to the moon, I refer to the moon as Grandmother Moon, because we feel that the moon has feminine energy. When I refer to the sun, I either say father son or grandfather son. So my relationship with nature is of utmost respect and almost like it's a family member. So my words around nature are very respectful and, like I just indicated, using language that actually is an extension of our family. Now, I want to say that how different language has different meanings, and that's why language is so important. So, for example, when we talk about helping for the environment, right? Because we all are helping the environment, but it's the language you choose to use around what you're doing. I can say, I'm fighting against climate change. I'm fighting against climate change. And that language is really, when you talk about a fight, that means that there's opposition. So fighting against language change, what I say instead of fighting against something, because that's a negative, what I like to say is, I want to heal Mother Earth. I want to heal Mother Earth. See, those two phrases that mean the same thing sound very different and feel very different. So language and how we use language is so important. I also want to talk about, and Ramson touched upon this, with communication and language. I want to remind everybody that there's two sides to communication. The obvious, when you're communicating, you're using language, words, written or spoken, to convey your thoughts, ideas, or beliefs. But where the most people miss out is there's a second part of communication, which is listening. It's not just about speaking one way, it's about listening. And Ramson has beautifully talked about how you can listen to nature, listen to Mother Earth. I think was also mentioned earlier about there's a word when the water runs against the pebbles. So it's about listening to nature and listening to Mother Earth. So you really do need that both sides of communication. And Mother Earth right now, as we all have seen, is really not very happy. And that's why we have these extreme weather conditions, whether it be last year was the hottest, temperatures on Earth. We see more storms. So, we really need to come together and unite. The last point I want to leave you with is my indigenous wisdom is because I can't say I speak for everybody. Every indigenous tribe throughout the world had different beliefs, but yet they were at the core the same. And that's the concept of oneness. Cherokees believe that we are connected to everything that's ever been and everything that ever will be. So when you look at the concept of oneness, you realize that we are all responsible of caring for nature, of caring for Mother Earth, because we really are united. And that's no different than many of the philosophers that lived many years ago, Plato, and many philosophers talked about that concept of oneness. And indigenous beliefs, we talk about the concept of oneness. So as you move forward in your day, I think there's three things I would like to ask of you. Number one is I ask that you pay attention to your language and keep your language in the positive, not negative. I ask that you become a listener in addition to speaking in a communicator. And I ask that we all unite so we can help heal Mother Earth. She needs us right now. And each and every one of you, and I'm including myself in this, all of us can come together and make a difference. When we unite, we are unstoppable. And I just want to say thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for your time. In Cherokee, we say Wado.
Wado. I don't know if I said it right, but yeah, thank you so much, Cynthia. That was so beautiful. I was really excited to hear the part about like the fighting and the healing. And I think you're right. Like if we actually started saying healing, it definitely doesn't give me the same eco anxiety that fighting gives me, because fighting gives me the feeling that I'm losing, and then healing doesn't give me that same feeling. So I guess there's a lot that changing language can do, not just for the worldview, but it also could help us as young people who are all suffering with climate and eco anxiety and this feeling of hopelessness and things like that. Just changing the way we say the words could also have a powerful impact on just our mental and physical health too. This is just what I'm feeling right now that I'm sharing with you. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Um, as we want to now give you guys some time to reflect on what you heard from all the speakers. If there's any question that's coming up in your mind right now, please feel free to share it in the chat. And while you all think of a question, I would like to ask a question as well. My first question is either to Ramson or Cynthia, which is really trying to be the devil's advocate now and say, apart from obviously the part that I'm definitely convinced, I still want to ask, does it really make so much sense for us to think about like language and something like just changing language? Can it really have an impact on like this social ecological crisis that we are seeing in the world? Can that really make a dent in it? And because for us as young people, we always feel like we are running out of time, and there is so much that needs to be done to save the planet and heal the planet now, but we do not know if words are enough to do it. And I don't know if you guys had any wisdom to share with us to convince us that this could actually be a powerful way to create change.
So I absolutely 100% believe that by changing our language, it can, because like I already said, language has a vibration, right? And so when we change the vibration and shift the vibration, then that's when the healing begins. And I know that so many of the young people feel anxiety. I mean, there's now a term like environmental anxiety. And I don't want you to feel that anxiety. What I want you to do is change that into action. And the first place that you start with the action is with your words. And I honestly believe that, by uniting and looking at our commonality versus our differences and looking and treating, like I said, Mother Earth with respect and healing. I think if we focus on that, then you focus on the solutions versus fighting against someone out there. That's why I gave that example, because it's the same, concept, but it's just a different vibration. So absolutely we can change and unite around language.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope this has convinced anybody here who needs extra convincing that we should now start really thinking about language and do something so simple. And it doesn't really need much. It just needs you to think about it. And that's the easiest change we can make, right? So yeah, anybody here who has questions for our amazing speakers before we all go into breakouts and take some more time to reflect?
Sweta, can I make one comment about your lovely question? I didn't say this when I was speaking earlier, but language, when the purpose of it is to heal, is sacred. It is at the core of the spiritual piece of us. So a decision to shift your language purposefully is a decision to think differently first, and then to act differently. So it isn't a small thing. And in fact, in my own experience, having not been raised in a world where Indigenous teachings were available, I have found that the journey of shifting my language has felt revolutionary. Once you hear things and you start choosing one word or a suite of words over another, it feels kind of like a little tectonic shift is taking place inside. So it's not small. And the feeling of changing language is not small. So for those of you, and many of you, who were raised being in a world that believed in the sacredness of language and in the sacredness of life, and that all life is sentient, and all life is sacred. For those of us who were not, then the notion of language as the first step is actually it's at the core of making a change. And it has the impact that is far more powerful than fighting battles. It's actually an internal shift, and other people can feel that consciousness shift in you, whether as a relationship with someone who's already in that consciousness, or someone who isn't, that perceives that in you and is curious and starts their own journey towards doing that.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Maggie, for sharing. We have three people who would like to speak. We have Ramsan, Manaz, and then we have Mashika. So we'll go in that order. Over to you, Ramsan. And we do have a question in the chat for which Maggie and Cynthia, if you can answer there, please go ahead. Otherwise, we could also open the floor if we have time. Ramsan, are you able to speak?
Yes, and thank you so much. One thing that I would like to mention is that when we talk about language, it's so much connected to the things that we do. And I would say that in our areas are so much critical, and it's kept by our cultures. And I always say that when the Maasai, for example, lose their culture, biodiversity is so much at risk. And there are so many things that can lead us into losing our culture. But one critical thing is our language. I always say that, first of all, for us to keep the culture, we have to have the space, and the space that we have with our social behavior. We are very social. And when we lose our sociality, then our culture is losing. And the land helps us to keep that through our animals that we call manage our natural resources. Those things are so much connected to also connect us with biodiversity. And the language is so critical in holding our culture and our spiritual ways. So when we lose the language, it's automatic that so many things are going to be affected because the language affects the culture. The language also affects our spiritual connections. The language also affects our own cultural behavior and our social interactions. There are a lot of words that brings us together as a community, and they also bring us together in the things that we do. I will always say, as a Maasai in northern Kenya, I will go to northern Tanzania, which is inhabited by the Maasai, and the culture that they have, because of the space that they have, it can even help me to identify my own clan when I go and meet the cows, not even people in the other land. By only looking at the ear notching, I will know this is from my clan. And I will follow the cow and talk to the person and follow the person and talk to the whole family. So I know my clan. So those things are things that are not there. You cannot, no one else can know. But it, you know, from the language to the actions that we do everywhere, and also connects us. Like if I talk about my clan as Ilmakesen, it will connect me to a lion or a rhino, because those are the animals that we are connected to. And other clans are connected to different animals, like the elephant. There are others that are connected to the hyena. Others are connected to the snake, and they believe in them. And when we lose the language, it will lead us to losing everything. So I think as the decade of languages, we should so much stress around the language and documentation and everything and make sure that we preserve it. Those who have lost their languages, they are so much affected. And that's why you see so many people are stressing into documenting and preserving their languages. You should be proud of your language.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ramsan, for sharing those insights. Manas, over to you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. I will just add what Masireka said. Language is not only culture or history. The language is your identity. If you lose your language, you lose your identity. Now, my talk is gonna be somehow like a question or a call um, for help, because we struggle specifically in this region. We struggle with children are being diverted now into speaking another language, which is unfortunately, and I'm not saying unfortunately because I don't like the language, but it's dominating, the communication tools between the generation, which is English. In my country, English is becoming first language for you to get jobs, for you to be admitted into universities. And it's an alias, because the new generation now, they don't even recognize the name of national crops or even proverbs. They do not understand it. And in our culture, we have so many stories and proverbs and poem, books, everything that is related to nature, because we were our ancestors and even us, and up to our generation, our life has been connected to nature. We always played in nature. We didn't have technology to play with. They don't understand when we talk. They don't understand what are the local crops. And this is very bad. If you, how can you take them to be connected to your culture? Because no one else will save your culture but the people of their own culture. You can't bring strangers from outside and you say, hey, people, can you save the legacy we have, the history we have? Our people, our children should be doing this. And it's a big problem now in our region. And I'm talking about the Gulf. It's I feel bad. I struggle this with my grandchildren. They speak maybe 20 words in English and 2 in Arabic, and we have to repeatedly tell them, please express in Arabic. It, for us, we need every possible tool and help to bring back our children to their culture, to their ancestors' culture. So yeah, that's I wanted to share this, and we are trying our best, even when we make events, and this is very sad. If the language of the event is purely Arabic, the audience are very less than if it was bilingual or it was in English. It just it's not nice, and we feel bad about it. And thankfully now there are youth who are reconsidering to get their language back and to get their identity back, because they know the danger that will happen. And we can see it now all over the world, what is happening. People are losing their culture. South Korea is losing its culture. I think Switha, even in India, right? It's many countries are now, they speak another language, but not their own language.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I have a question from Masarika. I have a hand up from Masarika, but we have to go to breakouts quickly so that we can continue this reflection for everybody to do. So yeah, Masarika, over to you, and then we'll go into breakouts so that we can also come back after that. Thank you.
Yeah. Am I the one on floor? Yes, I'm Masreka in Uganda. I'm sorry, my video is not there. I don't know what could be the reason. But what I want to say about language is that, hello?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yes. Yeah, what I can say about language is that when we protect language, it is helping us to do a lot with our life, and it is helping us to communicate with the environment. Because I can give an example of in Rwenzori, we have a culture of the Bakonzo who are living in Rwenzori, that is Western Uganda and the eastern of Congo, that is DRC. So those people have their beliefs, and the communication between the environment, like the animals, the birds, and the people is strong. When we see red ants shifting from the valleys, we automatically know there will be a disaster. That is the communication between the red ants and people. When they shift, we know there will be a flood or there will be a landslide. So that is how we communicate with them. And it really helps us too much, because we start preparing. We will always know that maybe in this season, like in April and May, there is always disasters, floods, and landslides. So we can get the communication from those red ants, and we survive the disaster. So it also takes us to this thing where now with the young generation, we don't know these things. Like those who spend much time in school, they don't get time to share with the elders. It is hard for them to know that the red ants shifting from valleys is showing something that is going to happen. There are birds that announce the rain season. When they shift from a place to another, we will automatically, that is a rain season, and we start cultivating land to plant our crops. So that means maintaining the indigenous language is something very important in our lives. It will help us escape certain disasters. It will help us be able to observe what is going to happen. So you find that even myself talking to
Masarika, are you done? I think it's
relative, I should be having indigenous language. I'm sorry, my network. Yes, I'm finalizing. My network was poor a bit. So what I'm saying is, yeah, in my community, as my brother from Kenya said, it is easy for me to go to even Kenya or any other area of the world and know that this is person belongs to my clan. We also have clan totems. And because of this, we are protecting many animals in the national parks. Because I can bring a story of the chimpanzee. A chimpanzee is an animal that we communicate with because it likes imitating what a person does. And the story that I'm going to share in just 30 seconds is that long ago, a chimpanzee stole a baby of a woman who was digging. Because it was imitating and she was digging, it also carried the baby and went to the bush. For a period of 1 month, the chimpanzee was in the bush with the baby and they couldn't trace it. But the good thing we love about the chimpanzee and the reason why you feel it is related to human beings, it took care of this baby for the whole month until men got knowledge of now communicating to the chimpanzee in a simple way. They came with a dog, they came with another woman who was carrying a baby, and they placed the baby down as it also imitated and tried to put the other baby that it was having down. So when they continued doing this, it could also put the baby and move away. So because of that communication that they had, the language they were using with the chimpanzee, the woman left the baby and moved a bit a long distance. It also left the baby that was carrying and moved a bit a long distance. So men were able to pick the baby, and then the dog just helped them to fight the chimpanzee so that it goes away from them. So even up to now, we have a clan of the Batanji who are protecting a chimpanzee seriously because of the time it spent with a baby of a human being. So if we take our children away from this, using this language, like they just use the languages they are adopting from where they are studying from, we shall lose these tactics of now communicating to such animals. Because if there was no knowledge of bringing the baby you put down, the chimpanzee will also imitate. Maybe you never know. The chimpanzee could just take the baby away for long and we fail to get that baby. So it's good to maintain our indigenous language. That is
Thank
what
you.
I can say about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masrika. I really loved all your stories that you shared with us. It was beautiful. Thank you so much for doing that. We are running a bit late, so we want to quickly jump into our breakouts. Dennis, if it's okay with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the chat or as soon as we come back from breakouts. So just be a little patient. We quickly go into the breakouts now for maybe 10 minutes. And then once we're done with the breakouts, we come back and then we can hear thoughts from people. But Dennis, please feel free to share what you're thinking about also in the breakouts. So Andrea, as she helps us with the breakouts, do you need me to give you the floor?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. We are gonna go now to breakout rooms as we have divided breakout rooms based on languages. So we have some breakout rooms in French. We have other breakout rooms in Spanish and other ones in English. So please, you can help me a lot if you can put your name, your country, and the language that you speak in the name that appears in Zoom. And when I open the rooms, you will see an option to which group you can join. So try to change. If you feel fluently enough for doing the conversation in English, go to English. If you prefer French or Spanish, go to that. Sorry if we cannot provide this time more languages beyond that. We hope to improve that in the next webinars. But for now, you will see a window that is open in in your phone or in your computer that will invite you to choose a room. So please try to check that as well and choose the rooms based on the languages that you want. There are different English rooms, so you can choose the one that you like the most. And for our facilitators, I will place you in different rooms. Thank you. So please choose your room. Now it should be showing in your screen. You should be seeing in your screen the groups. And now. So for our interpretation, we will turn off the interpretation for now, and it will be up so you can go to the rooms as well.
I'm adding the question for
You are
everybody.
free to go to your
Yes.
rooms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We had a great conversation. It was so nice being with everybody in the breakout. Just hearing from them, this is sparking so many memories, so many stories for people, so many reactions of like languages that they remember as children and now want to remember again. And yeah, it was beautiful. And I hope all of you had a beautiful time. I want to, as we come close to this webinar, I don't want to take too much of your time more. We are going to quickly wrap up this webinar, but to help us wrap it up, I have to hear from all of you. So I have put the Mentimeter in the chat where all of you can start putting in your words, or your reactions to the webinar, how you feel right now, what do you want to do going forward, anything that's coming up for you in this group. And if anybody wants to speak while I share my screen, this is the time for you to share a few words that you want to share with us. I know, Dennis, you wanted to speak, so I will open the floor to you first if you're still interested, and then anybody else who wants to speak.
Okay, I still wanted to speak. Everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Ishimwe Dennis. I'm from Rwanda, and I'm so honored to would have joined the meeting. And I wanted to talk about language as a unifying factor. Um, since I was born in a family where we spoke Kinyarwanda only. I could not speak English. And when I went to boarding school, I'm still a student, I'm a high school student. And then I went to the school where I was forced to use English all the time. So what happened was I had to adapt and use English because there would no any way for me to actually cope with what was happening. I remember the very first day we went, everyone's like, we're going to have this, and they would speak, and I'm like, what did they just say it? I would not get it. So English, yes, is a unifying factor. But one of the things that I see that is happening in the world, I think one of the person just said it, but also I would love to repeat that there is kind of I know I love English, and it's a global vernacular. It's found everywhere in business, in whatever. But again, there is something that is happening, and it's causing cultural dilution, which is English is being used, and people are actually abandoning their mother tongue, which is like in my country we speak Kinyarwanda, and trust me, you cannot find anyone speaking Kinyarwanda in high school, which is a problem, which I think is a problem for how someone going to learn their mother tongue if they are forced to speak something that is not their mother tongue. Yes, I know we want to attend university, I know we want to do something that is very great, and you have to learn English. But again, you also have to promote our language, because there are some partners that we have in English, in our language, that you cannot find in Kinyarwanda. It's sometimes back I was sharing stories with my friends, right? You know, there are some stories you can tell in Kinyarwanda, but you cannot tell them in English, because there is that instinct that you have for that language. One thing I was like, can we maybe it's okay that you have a common language, but you also have to promote our indigenous language, if I may say, for they help us to communicate. Because look, my grandmother does not speak English. How do I communicate to her? So it's better that I because even if I think Kinyarwanda is also something that keeps growing. If I speak my Kinyarwanda and her Kinyarwanda, trust me, those are two totally different languages. So I find it so hard for us to adapt new languages and leave the other language. Yes, we're going to learn new languages, but we do not have to leave our mother language, for they help us to communicate with our people, and they help us to express. Like, if you give me time now to tell you a story in Kinyarwanda, I would not hesitate. But you give me time to tell you a story now in English, like, oh, what if I messes up? What if I have to structure and put all these things together because it's not my mother language. So it's better that we learn both new languages and our language, but not abandon our language, because as I said, it's all contribute to cultural dilution, because language is one of the strongest factor for the culture. If a language is not there, then the culture is diluted, which is bad. For if the culture is diluted, you do not have identity, which one of the person have said, if you do not have culture, you don't have identity. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. That was really nice to hear your experiences and how you feel. And we absolutely agree with you. It's good that we have English, but it's also important that we don't forget our languages. We have two more hands up. I'm hoping we can have you guys speak. I'm loving to hear everybody's reactions here. You can see some of the things that are coming up for different people. Please feel free to take some time to add more here as I leave the screen on. I'm giving the floor over to Peace and then to Itza. And after that, we would love to show you guys the artistic outputs that have come out from this and the reactions through art for the closing of the webinar. So Peace. Okay, Crystal.
So thank you very much. My name is Peace Milake Kanker. Milake is my native name. It means that I can do it. I'm a Manon tribe from Niba County, Liberia. So when we went into the breakup sections, and I was also telling colleagues about the kind of a gap that we experience in Liberia when it comes to language. I think if you really listen to how I speak, it make my accent almost like maybe the American language, because Liberia was under colonial rule in 1822 from America, and then when they settled in uh, the the native land called Liberia today. So from 1822 to 1839, there was a whole lot of colonial period, and so the borrowed language of English has become the mother tongue in Liberia. Even though Liberia has 15 tribes, but there is no central native language that we have to communicate. Until way back, we have the Kwere. The Kwere was one native language that we were using to communicate, and it was important for us to share our values, our aspirations, and how we can be able to be nature center, because most of our people are rural communities, and we and we are very good in conserving nature. But the tongue of English has become a gap in how we address and harness our activities in Liberia, because 80% of the population will speak English, and we do not communicate like the way you go to Ghana. We have what we call there's the there's the thing called a tree. They speak the tree, and tree are taught in school. You go to Nigeria, they have the Yoruba. You go to Kenya, the Maasai, and these native tongues are among the people. It also strengthens collaboration and how they move off. And I think this webinar today is so essential and important for me as a Liberian, as a climate activist, and someone who is passionate about nature, so that how we can be able to have a national conversation on having something about a traditional value when it comes to language, that we can communicate and we can be able to conserve nature. I'm so excited being part of this program, and I see it as a gap in Liberia because we are English dominant, and there is something we need to do to address that. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Peace. Thank you for sharing your insights. We are running a bit late and we don't want our interpreters to stay too much over time. So, Tisa, if you can keep it short, I would really appreciate it. But we would love to hear from you.
Thank you very much. I will try to be as brief as possible. Yeah, so when I came to this meeting at first, I had no idea what to expect, but it's just very interesting how the conversations have gone and very enriching experience. I'd like to share something probably for people to benefit. Right now, Zambia is experiencing the worst drought emergency at the moment. There's devastating hunger and there's a lot of crop failure where our country depends on agriculture, but there's like 95% crop failure and there's a lot of hunger. So I thought it's very important to probably find out on issues concerning drought from indigenous people. And I selected at least 4 communities that speak like 4 different languages. And they were able to literally talk about different signs that they saw that they feel was an indication that there was going to be drought, you know? So we rely heavily, for example, on the meteorological department, but there's just so much information from indigenous communities as well. But what mostly hinders people from actually contributing is the fact that sometimes language is not being considered. You go in these rural villages, you find that people are not speaking English, for example, they're speaking their local languages. But it takes a lot to actually hear from them and integrate their inputs into some of the solutions that we're basically looking into. So it's something that I have experienced in Zambia. It's very real. I've learned to appreciate that just listening to 4 different languages could impact me as an individual like that, enable me to learn so much and actually say, there's this wealth of knowledge here. Are we able to consider this next time? And maybe we could avoid certain situations. You know, so I feel like language in connection to actually biodiversity conservation and issues of disasters such as droughts or even floods is very, very important to pay attention to. I think that was the only contribution I had. It could be the same in other countries, but it's just probably a call to say, let's really consider language even as we come up with certain global, national, local solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tisa. I think that was really beautiful that you shared that experience with us. I think it'll really help everybody as well reflect on how it's, landing for them. But you did a beautiful job of connecting the reality of today's world with how language could be powerful. So thank you for that. So as we come to an end, we have 2 artistic expressions that have come up because we have Kelly, who's going to do poetry, and we have Aurora, who's an artist, and we have both of them who can share with us what came up for them when they heard all the amazing speakers and all the amazing participants speak here and everything that's in the chat. So I'm going to give it over to Kelly now. And take it away, Kelly.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Wow, I am feeling so inspired by everyone who shared here. Thank you I just feel like we're weaving this tapestry together, creating this mosaic of art where the individual pieces create this beautiful collective expression. So I'm going to do a collective mirroring poem, which is basically taking all the different words and phrases and wisdom and insights that were heard today and reflecting it back to you all. So this is all direct quotes from speakers, participants in a compilation. So I hope you enjoy it. This was inspired by you all. And I'll try to move slow because I'm playing around with words and I know the translators also have to work with that. And I can put the final version in the chat as well so people can see it in words. So I invite you all to just take a deep breath and close your eyes if that feels good, or take a soft gaze in front of you and just really drop your awareness into your heart space. Just taking a moment to feel into everything that was shared today and to open your hearts as you hear these words. This poem is called Language Relativity. Language relativity. Language relativity. Some languages move horizontally, some move vertically. Some move right to left, not left to right. What's right? Storytelling by a fire, moving in circles, languages dancing, sculpture, poetry, painting. Language shapes our identity and belonging, individual and collective, inherent and absent, human and non-human. Language like oceans changing the shape of the land. Shape-shifting. Indigenous elders as libraries. When we lose one, a library burns down. If we lose our indigenous languages, we lose our knowledge. Languages lost to our children, losing identities, losing cultures. When we protect language, we protect ourselves, the land. When we see red ants shifting from valleys, we survive the disaster. Nature speaks loudly. Words are powerful. Words have energy. Select your words properly. Cycles and seasons, absolute certainty, summer to fall, new moon to full respect, like a family member. Mother Earth, fighting. We're not fighting against anything. I want to heal Mother Earth. Saying the same thing, but it feels very different. It's not about speaking one way, two sides of language. It's about listening to nature and Mother Earth, reciprocity, both sides of communication, both oneness. We are all responsible, united. Stay in the positive, be a listener, come together. As we come together, we are unstoppable. Growing trees today are tomorrow's future forest. Young people today are tomorrow's leaders. Goodbye. In the Cherokee language, we don't have a word for goodbye. We believe our spirits will meet again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That was really beautiful. So we would like to end today with a short video or a picture that Aurora, who's our artist from Mexico, is going to share with us. Aurora, I'm going to give the floor over to you to tell us what came up for you as an artist while you heard everybody and what you have created for us today while you heard everybody.
Hi, well, I'm kind nervous because this is not a finished work. We will show to you the final result later, but I can show you the sketches that I made to later final the sketches and connect all them in a video. So I'm gonna share my screen so you can see part of the creative process.
Aurora, we only see your photo. Did you already share your screen?
Yeah, I'm trying to share the screen. Well, if not, let me connect by my cell phone and maybe directly with the camera of the cell phone show you the tablet. Yeah. I'm going with the cellular and connecting.
I just added you in. You should be able to share from here.
It's the first time I heard of the word lexicon. Sorry for my English, but is lexicon means language or something to do with language?
Maggie, would you want to answer that?
Lexicon is a more formal word to discuss all forms of language, not just the written, right? It's a bigger meaning, and it has there's a science of language, and lexicon, the word lexicon grew out of that.
Aurora, over to you.
But
yeah, I'm ready.
You do need a picture of the palm tree.
Okay. This is the first image. What I'm thinking is we start with someone telling to us this all that we hear here in this meeting. So this is a message about how we have two ways to see the world, and that the language reflected. And then we're gonna see around her like the different ways to see the world, and we're gonna came inside her mouth. Like we can in the video, we're gonna be inside here, and then we're gonna start a journey as we have it here. So then we're gonna start to see the different reflections that we have, like how if we recognize our words and we start to decide to change it, it could be a transformative change for ourselves inside. And we can change, for example, the way we see the world in this hand to more like a part of us that is inside of us, of nature, and how we can start to grow that connection. And we're gonna keep like traveling with the different lines that we have in the draw. And then we're gonna see another things that we talk about how nature also speaks. And if we keep attention to that, we can see how nature is telling us what is happening in our around. I'm not sure what are the books that someone later were talking about, but I imagine like this, like coleopters, beetles. So that's what I draw. And yeah, we're gonna keep like hearing different things, like how also language shape us and how the people who is around can determine our way to see the world. But also if we realize that we can see what we want to keep and what we want to change. Also, I like a lot this idea of oneness, that we can feel inside everything, and everything is also us, and words not divide us of the rest of the world. So I try to in this is gonna be like the end of the video, and how we can be again part of everything. And also I like this part of how if we maintain the language, it's a way to also keep connect with our identity, with the knowledge and the connection, and how from a lot of years before we have like drawing this way to see the world. And it's really sad that the different parts of the world it's losing this. So yeah, these are some of the different parts that we're gonna see at the end of all this. And finally, like little tips of how we can ask ourselves the way that we understand the world with our words. like if we see ourselves inside everything, like or we split that identity, right? Or I really love this point of view of how we can change the field of fight to heal. And in that way, also the connection about how we, for example, see the moon as our mother or brothers or everything that it's connected to us, related to us. That I think it's also the meaning of kinship, right? How we feel that we are almost like family. And yeah, that's the general ideas that I can show with you in this moment. Thank you for your patience. And I hope you really enjoy the final video when we show with you and the different images also.
Yeah. Thank you, Aurora. Those were beautiful. I know it's not easy to do all this in the exact time that people were talking, so we are very grateful for you. Thank you for that. I definitely want to thank our interpreters who have done a phenomenal job of helping us in the last 2 hours. We've kind of gone 30 minutes over. I'm so sorry for the delay that we've had, but I hope all of you are still with us because you really thought this was a great place to be. So thank you for everybody for staying longer than expected, and thank you for all our interpreters for interpreting also longer than expected. So a heartfelt thank you to all of you. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Kelly. Thank you to Andrea for doing the tech for us. And I hope to continue this conversation with all of you as we go forward. Kelly, any last words from you before we close the call?
No, I just want to thank everyone as well. This wouldn't be possible without you all. So you brought the wisdom, you brought the insights that we all heard today. And we'll follow up with the poem, with the art, with the recording. So be on the lookout for that. And thank you all so much. Thank you, interpreters. We love you. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you, speakers. You're the roots of all of this.
Take
Bye,
care, everyone.
everyone, or see you later.
See you later.